The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is now Wednesday, September 2nd, and you're with the New Mind Lunch and Learn. Today, as noted on the listserv, Richard's going to be talking about some more of the features of the new release to hopefully be out right around, I think the scheduled date will be this coming Monday, the 7th. But, just pencil that in. That if things change, they could release a bit later, but won't be any earlier. And we're still looking at the last sort of beta testing pieces there, and things are looking good. So he's going to talk today about some of those features that he didn't cover last time. This would be just some of the other things that are involved in the software. Yes, this will be posted on the New Mind YouTube channel once they go through everything and make sure it's a nice clean copy. Woo! And I think we're going to try to keep people muted while he's talking. Okay, yeah. We're going to keep people muted while he's talking, then he'll unmute you when we get done with the formal presentation. And just so folks know, I'll be leaving this session today a little bit early. I've got a doctor's appointment. I'm fine. I'm just going for my doctor's for the current seasonal flu shot, and so the opening was today. So I'll be leaving a bit early, but Richard will be here the whole time along with Judy and Martin. So Richard, without any further babbling on by me, it's all yours.
Okay, Rob, let me make sure my screen is showing.
Yep, looking good. New Mind release number 20, September 7.
Yeah, okay. I actually unmuted everybody because this is not
okay.
Quite a decided it's not quite such a formal like I'm giving out theory and so forth. So it's fine if people want to stop and ask me questions, because this is really for all of you end users. And you're the ones with the frequently asked question perspective, and so I'll just leave it open-ended. You can just chime in or ask questions as we go along, because any questions that come to your mind are going to be the same questions that come to everybody else's mind, and we can't always think of all those questions, which is why I asked on the listserv a bit back, what's the best way, everybody, to do this, and we got some good recommendations. So just starting off, we expect the release to be September 7th. Of course, you never know. Somebody may report at the last minute some big bug that needs to be fixed, and we have to put it off a bit longer, but that's the intended day at this point, so that'd be coming up pretty quick here.
Hey, Dr. S, this is Jordan. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jordan.
It was actually, we talked about it yesterday briefly. We're going to be closed on Monday. It's Labor Day.
Yes.
And so it'll actually go out the 8th.
The 8th. Okay. Thanks, Jordan.
Yeah, good point, Jordan. I forgot about it being Monday and it being a holiday.
We did too. But yes, it'll go out Tuesday.
All right.
God, Jordan, you and Jason don't want to be working on Monday when it comes out and people call up saying, what happened?
You're on your own.
Just keep this in mind, Jordan. No soup for you.
Okay, and I mean, we have about 26 people here today, but this is going out. This change will be going out to hundreds of clinics, and so we hope they'll get the message. We're going to post this video and try to reach out to everybody, but not everybody is, proactive in keeping on top of this stuff. So we really appreciate that all of you are. So let's get started talking about this. Here's a trends session, and a fairly big change that's coming up is that when you run a session in a folder, you're going to need the clone function. You're like, what is the clone function? I need that for me in my clinic. It's now required that you use the clone function to make changes. Well, you haven't seen the clone function because the clone function is now down here. You can see it right under training efficiency. It's sitting there. So what that actually means is when you go to your protocol screen where you set up your protocols, this is typically what you'll see. And you'll say you might be training along and want to change something here, you're going to have to use the clone folder. And so if you want to change location, or you want to change frequency, any of these component bands, like this is 2 to 12, you might want to change it to something else. Or if you want to change training something up or down, you'll have to click on the clone folder. Now, what will the clone folder do? Clicking on the clone folder creates a duplicate folder, so you don't have to go through all of the hassle and headaches of start a new training plan, fill everything out, make sure it's all right, make sure it's like the one it was, and then do everything just to make one change. And that can drive you crazy. So, you know, with our pledge to make things as simple as possible, we've made it so that you click that clone button, and then you get this clone duplicate folder. Once you get the duplicate folder, you can change the name. Like I had, in this case, 2 to 12 down. And often when you get that on the protocol output, you go like, that's a big squash. This person is got a lot of delta and theta and alpha. I don't think they can do it all at once. I think I'll have more luck if I just work on theta down. And when you do that, often delta and alpha come down too, because you're increasing circulation when you do that, and perfusion in the brain. So let's say you wanted to change that 2 to 12. Well, you could just say, okay, I'm going to rename this thing, this new duplicate folder, and I'm going to change it to 4 to 7. And I might change 4 to 7 here and here. And then I've renamed it and said, well, I'm going to put 4 to 7 down so I know that this duplicated or clone folder is the folder that I made the decision. And the folder's dated, so you know, well, I did that folder and then I did this folder. So I was doing that. Now I'm doing this. I decided to do 4 to 7 down instead of that down. And so you'll just click save, and then this is the folder that you'll be using from that point on with the client to decide if you want to make any other changes in the folder. Like maybe you want to change the percentage of reinforcement. You know, you might want to change that rate, or you want to stop training something down. I mean, there's anything in terms of location, or you decide you want to take that same protocol and move it to another location. You know, like you're training at F3, F4 with protocol 20, and you go like, well, this is working good, but they're getting a little anxious. I want to go back at C3, C4 and train back there to stabilize them again for a session or two before I go up. So now you have a secondary folder where you can go back and forth between them. So clone example A3, C3, C4, which is that folder name, is now clone example A, 4 to 7 down, 3, C3, C4. I should have put actually that in front of the 3, but I was rushing my PowerPoint. So now this protocol has become that protocol. Any questions on that sequence among anybody?
I have a question. Sorry.
Are you able to change the name, or do you
Yes.
live with clone from here on out?
No, you could change the name. You could change the name entirely. You can change the name any way you want. I'm just lazy and I forget stuff. So I was going like, well, I was doing Jim Jones, and I call it Jim Jones first protocols, and I didn't want to mess with it. And I just said, well, Jim Jones first protocols with 4 to 7 down or whatever, you know. But you could call it anything you want. There's no reason to worry about that. It will all go under, because these are all linked. Well, up here it says demo C. So anything I have in here is linked to demo C. So whether it was clone example A or clone example A 4 to 7 down, or I said clone example A and I put new protocol 4 to 7 down, that would all be under demo C. It would all be under that client's or patient's folder up on the web, you know, where their map is and where all their information is on their, you know, where it records all the information on the protocols you did and what the trend screens were up there.
Can you pop the previous slide up for a second, Richard?
Yeah.
So yeah, right there where he has it circled where it says clone example A, for those that don't understand this, you could erase all that and type in anything you want. to rename that particular protocol.
Thanks, Rob.
How does that impact the trend history?
You mean up on the web?
Yeah, like if you're in the middle of a session and you click trend history and you're scrolling back, will you be able to see the original?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
You should be able to see it.
Dr. Suter, it's Jojo. How are you?
Hey, Jojo.
I'm wondering if there's something in place to have the most recent folder created. I know these are alphabetized and filed under that person. I think it would be nice to have the most recent file or clone pop to the top of that list.
Okay.
Where do you see the date where you mentioned a date that it was created?
I don't know that it shows up in this area here. I think it would show up when you reviewed things. That's
right.
What
okay.
I meant.
I'm just thinking of like having text go in and see which one they're on today. You know, it may have changed. We note that now in their folder, their like travel folder, but it might be nice to have whichever one they're on go to the top of that list.
Yeah, Jojo, have you been using this beta that we sent out?
Yes, but not the clone feature.
Okay.
I wasn't sure what that was. I've just been creating each new file as we.
Oh, okay. You didn't know what that was. Wow.
Yeah.
We've been talking to you about it. Yeah. For all those who are beta, if you don't know what something is, please contact me or Jordan or Jason right away so that we can make sure that you know what it is.
Dr. S., this is Tana. Can you still change the percentage manually, or do you have to use the clone center to change anything? While you're running a session, can you still change those percentages if you go to reinforcement rates, if you go to manual?
No, it doesn't allow you to change that here. Now you can change.
I think she's talking about it in the actual when you're running a session in real time.
Right.
So in the thermometers, can you go into the thermometers where it's auto versus manual and then up or down a threshold?
So you might change it temporarily in real time.
Right.
I would have to. Nobody has checked that in the beta testers. I mean, nobody's reported on that. So we would.
Okay.
I'll do it right now while we're talking, Richard.
Okay, great. That's why we
Thank
have
you.
beta testers.
Yep.
That's why we're showing it to you now.
Thank
to
you.
get feedback, we need it. You try to think of everything, but sometimes things slip by because we don't know what everybody's doing all the time.
Right.
And so it's really helpful to get this feedback. Okay.
Dr. has another quick question just regarding that. So just to kind of clarify, the original reason we made the clone folder was if you make any changes, like say to the Hertz or something like that, it's technically a new protocol. And so that's the reason for the clone folder. But a question that I have is, should you be able to make changes to the reinforcement rate? Does that change the protocol enough to need like a clone of that? Does that make sense?
Yeah. For some people it will, and some people it won't, because it's not going to be a yes or no answer to that question.
Okay.
You may be, you may want to call a folder. If you decide to change something, and you can change it in real time, you might want to decide to call that folder, changing percent reinforcement folder. So, and make a note of it yourself what you're changing. But if you once you make a change, you're adding new factors into what you're doing, and that all of this comes down to, why did we put the clone feature in? Life was nice without it, or why'd you have to add that? And the reason was to make possible new trend performance analysis, to make that feature available and to develop it. So we're putting in this new feature, which hopefully most of you know now, because I did a presentation on it last Wednesday, and we have a video up on the New Mind YouTube channel explaining what the new trend performance analysis is. And just to remind you all, that takes these different components of layering, compression, and convergence, those major components of trend analysis, and aggregates them into a single line on a scale of 1 to 100%, so that you can evaluate the quality of their performance overall during a session. And people ask, well, will there be a number so that you could say, oh, well, what was the grand average of that trend performance over time? Well, we will be putting that number in once we have enough data to find out what the mean and standard deviation on performance is. And we could even ultimately break that down to what's the mean and standard deviation performance for people with TBI versus people with depression. So we have some basic data in the system that can let us do that. But that would be in the future, and that would be desirable because people are always asking that question, and that also helps us decide, well, what's the best protocol? So eventually, we want to determine client performance on setting A versus setting B. You get two protocols in the output of the map. This person has TBI, they have these features. Eventually, we can apply artificial intelligence to this stuff, and it can look at all these complex variables and make an even more accurate decision on what protocol might work best, and what protocol with what disorder and what type of map. So you'll be able to initially look at that now that we have this clone function, because we know this was done only on this set of training sessions, and protocol X was done on this set of sessions, and protocol Y was done on this set of sessions. So you can actually go up and look and say, well, how were they performing? And we can actually take these trend performance averages and set it up in a chart, so at the end of the session, you said, well, I did these protocols with this type of TBI, and I can see overall this person did better on these than those, and overall they did really good in general or not so good. So it's going to give you the ability to do a quick and simple analysis of very complex variables and start to understand what's working better for you as a clinician or for that particular client. So there's a huge advantage in doing this. There's certainly some inconveniences of training in the middle of making changes in the middle of a training session. Our experience is that the majority of people aren't changing things all the time, and constantly shifting percent reinforcement and so forth and so on. You get very effective results without doing that, and we don't really know the efficacy value of constantly changing reinforcement rates. It's speculative at this point.
Richard.
Yeah.
To back up to the question, I went ahead and I took a protocol. I have like a demo one like you do. So I'm running this in simulation, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And when you clone it, you can still go in. The original question was, can you adjust your targets, like your thresholds? And yes, you can. You can go in there and you can go into manual, or you can go into audio. You can change the auto thresholding to whatever you want to change it to, as you could before. The thing is that after the first session, you don't have that trend history from the previous version that you were cloned from. But once you start the cloning, then that trend history shows up. I'm going to let this run for another minute and then see when I go back to review sessions whether it ties in at all. But right now, it does not appear to tie to the session protocol from which it was cloned.
So what you're saying, Rob, is that you can alter the rate of reinforcement during the live session once you clone it.
Absolutely, which makes total sense. Yeah, that's what you want to be able to do. So just because you've changed, you're like in your example where you went from 2 to 12 to 4 to 7, you can still, change the threshold if they weren't responding well, they're responding too much to that within that session. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right, right. Yeah, we probably will want to put a flag in on that so that if we go to do data analysis later, we know that that was not a pure trend screen, that it was contaminated by changes in reinforcement rate or something else during the session. And that way we can not include those in our analysis. So I really thank you all for bringing that up, because that is something that we'll definitely want to do moving forward.
Thank you. I don't do that often, but once in a while I do.
Yeah, so, once in a while, we've always done it once in a while too, but not on a regular basis. And sometimes it seems to help. A lot of times it doesn't seem to make much difference. Brains are stubborn.
So hi, this is Honey. Hi.
Yes, Honey.
Hi, it's really exciting. So I just want to clarify for the clone folder, it's to be used within the folder that you're actually using now, but not to set up like a new training folder.
Well, when you use the clone, it will set up a new set of protocols like this, but they'll still be part of that training folder that's up on the internet. So you create a training folder on the internet, or a QEG. When you do the QEG folder or any folder, client folder on the internet, links to the software, and everything you do goes down to that client folder. So no matter how many sessions you make, they go up to that. How many of these things you create, they go up to that client folder. And so when you create a new folder with the clone, it's just like you created it yourself. The only difference is that the clone just does it automatically for you.
So is there any downside of using the clone feature? Let's say you're training C3, C4 protocol 4, and now you're moving to 0102 protocol 18. Is there any downside because the patient information is all in there already, but you're just kind of making two changes, let's say the location and the actual that you're doing 18 instead of 4? Or is it better to just start from scratch and input their information, like you would do when you're setting up a folder at any time?
No, I would use the clone function. As far as I know, that was the development team's hope and ambition. That was their vision, and as communicated to me. And there shouldn't be any downside as far as we've heard from the beta testers.
Okay.
No, I think it just simplifies things, Honey. You're able to make a new protocol using similar features, whether it's the same training, parameters or different sites, without having to go start from scratch and set the time and, all that kind of stuff. It just simplifies it, but you still have all that data there, and so it gives you just a quicker way of doing it.
Right. So when you want, Rob, when you want to select let's say protocol 18, it'll just be in the list the same way protocol 4 was in the list.
Well, if you're not selecting a protocol, you're going in and changing it. So if you wanted, let's say, using Richard's example, you went from 2 to 12, let's say that's protocol 3, and then you wanted to go 4 to 7. I think that's protocol 2. In that title where he shows you where you name it, it's still going to say 3 at C3, C4, only you're cloning it. So if you wanted to specify it, then you would say clone, and you might say, 3 to 4 or 3 to 2, I mean. So you know what you've done.
Right.
But you could label it any way you want.
No, but what I'm asking is, like, we were doing, let's say, protocol 4 at C3, C4. Now I want to move this person all the way to 0102 and use protocol 18. When I go into the next training for them, if I had set it up through the clone feature, how is it going to be listed to select, let's say, protocol 18 at 0102 versus the one I had been using prior, which was protocol 4 at C3, C4?
Well, you could just, I guess, use that drop-down menu and do it.
And in that menu, it'll read a protocol 18. How will I, you know what I'm saying? Because now when I do them separately and not as like.
I've got
moving
your
it?
question, honey. Let Richard carry on. I'm going to go
Oh.
test drive that,
Oh,
and I'll
goody.
report
Okay,
back in a
thank
few
you.
minutes. I'll report
All
back in
right,
a few
Rob.
minutes. Go right ahead. Okay.
Okay. Good questions. Very excellent questions. That's going to really help clarify stuff. It could be an accelerated way of generating new folders. And I think that was our intent. Our main purpose, again, in doing it was so that we could give you a chart eventually that showed how the client did over your series of sessions in terms of their performance, which is something that people have wanted for 20 years. Something that really is accurate and really shows change that could be that correlates with the changes in the map, which I haven't seen any software showing. You can see that to some degree if you're using Z-score training. It's the closest I've seen to it. But that's
So Richard, the answer to Honey's question is, if you go in and you change the protocol in the clone function, it lists that protocol just as you go in to create new training plan.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It just says, I just did that. I had one that said protocol 1, C3, C4. I cloned it the exact same way and changed the feature, like 2 to 7 or whatever. You could still use the thermometers. And within that, I went ahead and I said, use the drop down menu, said protocol 8, F3, F4, and that's how it comes up and that's how it runs.
Oh, that's fantastic. Wow.
But it saves eyes open and that it's active. It does some things it saves you a little bit of time.
I think that we in the New Mind family are very fortunate because, Richard, you're a clinician first, and that it really becomes so much easier for all of us. I mean, I'm speaking for myself, but I'm sure I'm not the only one who is finding everything that you offer to be just really unbelievably better and easier. It's not like most of us don't have lots of clinicians in their practice who also do it with them. So we're all like lone rangers trying to kind of muddle through. And I am, from speaking for myself, very grateful. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that feedback. And yeah, that was the whole intent of building New Mind, was to stop having just engineers and code developers defining everything. And there's an inherent tension in trying to change that. And, in our company, that tension has existed because it's such a huge challenge. But I think we've overcome that we now have everybody on board, that we have a development team that's really sensitive to support and to the clinicians. And as support and clinicians, we're beginning to really appreciate the difficulties the development team has to go through. And in that process, we've facilitated a really powerful and I think unique in the industry two-way communication. And it has not been easy. It's been a challenge because, you think so differently as a clinician than you do as an engineer or developer. It's very hard to bridge that gap. But I think we've finally gotten there. My main concern here is that we don't get too complicated. It's like, oh no, we're going to add a clone function. Do we really want another button? Everybody's got plenty of buttons. We're all just clinicians wanting to get the job done. But after evaluating how this will make the job easier, that we could do it in a simple way, and that it would offer the benefits of better analysis and feedback for the clinician down the road, we decided it was likely worth doing. And then, having given it to the beta testers, we got confirmation, and now we're getting really good feedback on the caveats and your concerns. And that goes straight to development now. They'll know about it at 2:00 this afternoon. They'll all know your feedback.
Yeah. And that's another amazing piece to all of this, is that there's this collaboration between the clinicians out here and the developers. And, it's like always more work for them when we give the feedback that, okay, well, can you tweak this? And there's such positive reception. I never, ever feel like, oh my God, what are you bothering us again? Like, it's always like, oh yeah, well, let's see if we can get on that. It's really.
Well, that's good to hear too, because I've gotten that reception when I was starting out in the field, and I was not happy about it. So we're trying to avoid it.
I agree with Honey. Honey, when I'm testing something, if I found a glitch the other day in something, and I shot it to Tim, and as soon as I shot that message to Tim, he said, "I'll get on it." And they had just released another beta version. He said, "It'll be in the next version." Then that same day, they corrected that bug, and it was out. So they're on the feedback. There's always thanks. That's a good catch. It's a nice working relationship.
Yeah, and when you guys have bugs, when things don't go right, that goes straight to the development team. They see that instantly. They may not be looking at the bug section. I mean, they'll be coding, but they'll look over eventually and say, "Oh, somebody had a bug," and it was this machine here related to this clinician. You know, I mean, they could literally call you up and ask you about it, but they don't always have time. But a lot of bugs get fixed behind the scenes that you all never see, because you may not be using that function very much, but somebody in another clinic will. And so we're constantly double checking and fixing little things, for sure. But, Jojo, he made that great statement, it'd be great if that came to the top. That's an end user, savvy end user insight. Like, oh man, my people are going to potentially get confused if the change doesn't go straight to the top. That's a really valuable piece of information. On the other hand, that's not just sometimes that's not just one line of code. That sometimes can be hours or who knows, days. You don't know until you find out what that piece, that function is connected to. And it can be connected to a lot of stuff or just one thing. So what sometimes looks easy is profoundly complex. And what sometimes looks complex is really just one change of one line of code. So you don't know. It's impossible to judge unless you're the person doing the code. It's very deceptive on both ends.
Richard, do you mind if this crazy guy up there on Vancouver Island is asking a very fundamental question?
Oh, go ahead, Martin. You're a potential end user, right?
I definitely am. The question is, do I still have an autopilot off button? With this, I mean, could I still train people offline, very basic? And the reason why I'm asking this is because up here, they have a couple of areas which are really unimaginable in other parts of the world where there is no internet. So the question again, can I do very basic training, continue doing very basic training offline? Cloning needs online. So can I do that? Basic training.
Yeah, so let me make sure I understand. You're asking if you can still use the clone function if you're training offline?
Oh, no, it's absolutely obviously I can't. But the question is, can I still train offline? I will lose all records, of course. But can I just basically produce feedback without being online?
I don't think I fully understand the question. I mean, as far as I know, you can train offline and use most of the functions that we have.
I'm wondering whether the question is, before I got to leave, whether if you're in offline mode, is the clone function going to function? And I'm going to test that out for you.
No, you don't have to. It's not, most likely. That's the idea of clone. Cloud.
I guess I'd like that, Rob, I'd like that question answered. Can you clone if you're offline?
I'm testing it out for you right now. Okay, I'm offline, and the clone feature is available, and I'm gonna just change a protocol here real quick and hit save and start. Oh, I have to, makes me want to do a location too. How smart it is. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna let you know in a minute.
Thanks for chiming in, Michael. This is important for me because I'm working at locations, if I visit people, where there is no internet. We don't even have a cell phone.
Yes, sir. It works.
Another winning function.
Yeah, that's extremely valuable for me. to know.
Yeah. So Martin, yeah, if your internet's down, yeah, you can still use that function because it's built into the software whether you're online or off. It's not just an online feature.
Great. Okay.
All righty, folks. I'm going to go.
Okay, Rob.
See you all. See you all on Friday.
Thanks, Rob.
You betcha.
Bye-bye, Rob.
Bye bye.
Nice to have somebody like that riding shotgun with you. Okay, these other updates that I'm going to mention won't take as long to explain and won't affect a lot of people universally unless they're using it. Previously in the coherence training, when you set a coherence frequency, you had to train with all three functions. That has now been changed so that you can set up a coherence frequency and train with one amplitude frequency. So before you had to have 3 amplitude frequencies. We were trying to make it like the research, but then people said, well, what if those are low or not low, which the research actually never addressed. As I look back at it, I went like, oh, wait a second, they didn't address that. What if I only want to train 4 to 7 down or 4 to 7 up, and I'm training coherence down or up, and I don't want to affect any other frequencies because they're fine. So you can now just train one frequency and amplitude, if you want to do the same frequency as coherence, or if you want to select another frequencies, maybe you want to train coherence amplitude down, and you want to train beta amplitude up. So you can do it different ways. Any comments or questions on that change in coherence? I know Honey has been having great success with the coherence protocol. Last time I talked to her, Honey, are you still there? Have you done anybody else on it?
I'm right here.
You seem to really like it. Have you added anybody else in it?
Yes, I did actually. I added someone who had a lot of struggle with anxiety and kind of intermingled with a tremendous struggle with some OCD stuff around religion and guilt. And I just figured, hey, he's very stuck maybe, and he's getting a lot less stuck. And I haven't really done anything. I do talk therapy, but I was doing that before. So I think the coherence training kind of was it just seemed to sort of ramp it up and kick things into higher gear because he has his downs, but he sets himself up for certain triggers. I said, well, look, you just put yourself into a bad situation. But you will recover. Look, you did it already. Like he was coming in crying, literally in despair, and all his numbers on his trend, on his symptom tracker were 10 in terms of anxiety and rumination and obsessive thinking. And he would come in now and say, you know what, I'm having a good day. I'm having a good week, which, with OCD, I haven't had so much success in the past. So I wasn't overly optimistic. And that's why I decided to try the coherence training with him, because with amplitude training with other patients with OCD, it didn't really make a big dent. So to me, this is really remarkable in terms of coherence, to helping also with, we were looking at, say, on the spectrum, which is what I think had been studied, right?
Yes. The coherence training came out of working with kids on the spectrum. That's what it evolved from. Right.
So I wasn't sure in terms of any studies or any articles that coherence was being used for.
There isn't.
Let's say.
Yeah,
so here we go.
OCD. Well, if it's valuable with OCD,
yeah,
that would be a real exciting breakthrough for us as clinicians, because that's a real tough thing to get at. Sometimes you can have some pretty darn good success, but we know there are subtypes, and with some of the subtypes, you cannot make any progress. There's one subtype that seems to respond and the others don't. So that's an exciting thing. And we may actually, with our performance chart, be able to go and look back at people who reported OCD. When you're filling out the demographic part, the client profile, if you're putting protocols in there, if you're putting diagnoses in there, you're helping us in the future understand down the road. That whole system was built around the eventual hope of being able to do that, of being able to say what worked statistically with this type of person. So that's a contribution you make when you fill those out. And
So I'll be more mindful of actually putting in the diagnoses, populating that area. But here I have an N of 1 who it seemed intractable. He was not able to like let go of this. And he said, I don't have a life. I can't live. This is not living. And so I said, hey, let me throw the coherence at him and see what happens. So I can, as of today, he's still, and even though he had like a dip, he recovered from it. So he's, more upbeat again, and I'm continuing with coherence.
That's very exciting. That's very exciting. It sounds like something worth pursuing. Yeah, keep us updated on that and how that comes out. I think everybody would really like to know about that one, because that's whether you're prescribing medications or doing neurofeedback or doing counseling, OCD is one of the toughest disorders to work with.
I'm just curious, just one question for Penny. Was it alpha coherence in the back?
You're asking me? I'm doing frontal training. I'm following. I start with the delta. The way it was recommended, like sort of work delta first. So I'm doing FP1, FP2, F3, F4, delta down, and low beta go on delta down in coherence and in amplitude, and low beta go in amplitude.
Okay, so you're going from a map, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's such good information. Thank you. Thank you. Keep us posted, please.
Oh, I will. I'll happily present. I just want to give it a little more time because he's maybe done 15 or 16 sessions, and I had started with amplitude first.
Sure.
Oh,
thank you.
That'll be fascinating, honey. Look forward to that.
And the update on the last kid who I presented, he's still doing really well.
Wow.
And he comes in, I think, once a week now, just to keep. So maybe we're waiting to see if there are more shifts, but everything's down at a lot of all those parameters that we had seen in his progress tracker are still down there.
That's exciting that Coben did such conscientious and well-documented control group designs, research, evolved the protocol, tested it, compared it, published it, and now we're using it and it seems effective. That's not easy to do in any field. That's a great achievement for our field. Look forward to hearing more. Okay, well, we're starting to get a little low on time, so I just want to go over the last thing. We have presented proportional training using tones. We developed a new audio function, and we developed it specifically for peak performance, and I've been trying to get to that. It's been important for me for a couple of years, but we just didn't have the resources to get to it till recently, and finally we've gotten it, and I've utilized proportional training for people with too much alpha, people with busy minds and who can't get crossover in alpha theta. And we've had several successes training high amplitude alpha down based on that research that we've talked about in the past that's been published and replicated on reducing anxiety by training high amplitude alpha down. That anxiety is what's driving busy mind or high amplitude alpha. We know that. So it's very difficult as an OCD. It's very difficult to get that to change. This proportional alpha training to train high amplitude alpha down has been very effective. And I know for a fact from years of using it in other ways that it's extremely powerful too for performance training. So you can now train clients at home with proportional training features. You just have to select proportional tones. Oh, we're getting some noise here. Let me see if I can find out who that is. Okay, got it. There.
So the tones you can run while you're doing video fading as well?
That I don't know. I haven't even thought about that one. I will ask development that. but I suspect it's not possible at the moment, and I'll show you why. But you're
What was
showing,
the question?
and she wanted to know if you could do tone and video fading at the time, because it says audio fader, video fader, tones, proportional tones. These are possible functions you can use for home trainers, you know, and that's in the home training section of the software. We've added this proportional tones. Now, some of you are using proportional, and if you're like me, you're like, well, how does that work? I mean, how do I set it up? Do I set it up? Because normally you set that up when you go to train. But with the home training, you just select proportional training when you select home training. And then you don't do what you normally would do in you know, the clinical setting. In the clinical setting, you would go over here to session settings once you decided you wanted to do proportional training, and then you would go down here to tones, and then you would select proportional training. So you don't do that function if you're setting up proportional training for home. You don't have to do that at all. If you're setting up proportional training for home, then what you're going to do is just select proportional training here when you say, yes, I want to train this person at home. Once you do that, when they are at home, when they go to do set up the session, you know, they put the sensors on, they get walked, the software walks them through each step. The software now adds another step. So as they're training, they at home can select video and audio or proportional. So you're obviously going to direct them to select proportional at home. So they say, well, when you go and you get that step, select proportional. They select that and click begin session, and the tones will automatically begin to sound. So they'll be sitting there and they'll just be hearing the proportional tones. They'll be seeing the EEG training line, the standard thing that you normally see would just be the head with the raw EEG, but now they'll just hear the tones. So you can use the tones eyes open, you know, they can just watch the screen and their EEG while they do it, or they can close their eyes and listen to the tone. But at this point, we've simplified it to this level. And so at the end of the session, when they're done training with the proportional tones, they will now get a performance points graph. And they'll be able to see, well, this is how well I did training with proportional, with tones only. Any questions on that? Those of you who are doing peak performance training will be using this function a lot more in the future as we discuss it more. Okay, then the other point I want to make is that in the new software, you should be getting session results on the home training too. So when people train at home, it's my understanding that when they finish a session, just like with proportional training, they'll get a performance point chart. That was the whole reason we developed the performance point chart, was for the home trainers. And we also had peak performers in mind, because they want to know, how well did I do? That's for peak performers. That's always a critical question. So now there's a chart at the end that tells them. It's not going to give them all the detailed information you have in your clinical chart. And when you look at their chart in the office, you'll get all that detailed stuff, but they will only get the performance points chart, keeping it simple for the people at home. Any questions on that?
Do we have an option to not have them be able to see it?
I don't think it's in there at the moment, but I have mentioned it to development.
Mm-hmm.
And they will be putting it in. but I don't believe it's there right at the moment. It came in, that idea came in the very end of the beta testing cycle here.
Because I'm thinking about patients who are really hard on themselves and
Yes.
so overly judgmental that if they see, well, what did I do to, like when I do heart rate variability, they're so busy. Oh, I got 98. Oh, that's not good. And I think that for those patients, it would probably not serve them so well to have all of this chatter around how well they're doing.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And it was me who made that suggestion. So you're preaching to the choir.
Oh, good.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this is a classic case of, of where, communication can break down in the development cycle of creating, whether it's a jet plane or, an egg beater for your for your kitchen, or a microwave, or neurofeedback equipment. It's not till you get extensive end user engagement that you can really refine it. And I think this has been a very good example of this discussion today, of why that is and how it is, and that's why we're doing this now on the Lunch and Learns with all of you, so that we get really intense, immediate feedback, so we can iterate it next time and make sure those little nuances are available, or that we make it known that they're available. And we can put it in a frequently asked question thing. So yes, that's something that will be possible. Another thing that happens with beta testing too is, if you make endless changes, you never get the software out. So at a certain point, you have to say, okay, this can go out, and it will be more helpful than it will be harmful, and people are really needing it. So that means there's more work, a little more work for some clinicians, but the benefits to all are much higher. A little bit along the lines of what Spock would say, the benefit the many at the cost of the few. That's always the equation. So we think this benefits the many at the cost of the few, and the next iteration will be able to reduce the cost to the few. Any comments more? Just about out of time. Great feedback.
Dr. Suter, Jojo again. Will this update, this software update will happen at the same time as the home trainers are prompted to update their software?
It should.
All one update, not separate events.
I don't know if they go out as a unified, but I think they go out at the same time.
Okay.
I will.
Yeah, I'm just wondering when to expect, or let my people know that are doing home training, that they're going to start seeing a new screen at the end.
Mm-hmm. I will ask that question at the beginning of the meeting this afternoon and post it before the end of the day.
Great, thank you. This is very helpful.
Yeah.
Would you extend our thanks to Sean and the team too, Dr. Suter, for this?
I will, and they will love to hear that, because mostly they just get crap from me. And complaints from people calling support, and they really want everybody to get the best, most useful software, but we all have to communicate efficiently in a way that's unusual even in our industry to do that. So I think we're there, though. I think this is what we're doing today is a good example of it. So look forward to doing this again. We'll have another update coming for the map system in a few weeks, and we're going to go through the same process with you on that. And this is how we'll be doing it from now on. So really appreciate all of you who attend for these sessions, and your input has power. It will change how the software works if you come here and you listen and you give us your input. You will see that you are no longer powerless to see changes in your software if you're driven crazy.
That's helpful in our world too, Dr. S. Thank you so much, and your staff.
You're very welcome. Okay, everybody, I got to run. I got clients. I know you do. Again, thank you so much for coming, and we'll get together Friday and do some more.
Thank you.
See ya Friday.
See you Friday.
Thanks again.